Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to council time this Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. Could you go ahead with the roll call?
Counselor Young,
Here.
Counselor Belcott,
Present.
Counselor Fuentes,
Here.
Counselor Little,
Here.
and Chair Marshall.
Here. Okay, we'll start with public comment. This would be on agenda items only, limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the room?
And Chair, if I can, before public comment, I do have one amendment
Oh, I'm sorry, I
to
missed
the
that.
agenda.
Sure.
No worries. I'd like to add an item 9.3 under executive session for 5 minutes pending litigation, and there is potential for after action.
Oh, is there an RCW with that?
Yes, it is the same one's on the agenda. It's the 42.30.1101I.
Pending litigation, possible after action?
Correct, for 5 minutes.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Okay, then on to public comment.
Martha Meyer,
So I'm Martha Meyer. I'm glad to be here. Welcome to the new counselors. I'm a retired Lutheran pastor, have a strong interest in affordable housing and trying to help house the unhoused. And I wanted to speak in favor of the bridge shelter. I think it's going to pass, but I just wanted to make sure that you fund that effort and anything we can do to get people off of the streets. One of the things I wanted to point out, in case you didn't see it, is that there was an article in January in the Columbian on the harassment that people on the streets face. It was just heartrending to read that article because people are already on the streets are being spit at, they have things thrown at them, they're being made fun of and all of that. And I brought the article. I'd be glad to leave it if anyone wants it. But one of the things, one of the quotes is by Tyler Shavers, who is the city's homeless response coordinator and a former Vancouver police officer. And he writes that destabilizing people living outside by harassing them will not help them get into housing, especially when they are just trying to survive while dealing with other issues, such as mental illness and addiction. And if you also add instability by constantly placing somebody in fear that they must move, and if they don't, they're going to lose all their earthly possessions and literally have nothing, you're further increasing that stress response. So I think, as you know, it's very stressful to live out on the streets. I can't imagine how much more stressful it is to be harassed while you're living on the streets. I know the bridge shelter isn't perfect, but getting people off the streets will be a huge step into hopefully getting them into housing. Affordable housing is the next step, as you know. But as I say, I just want to commend you for your work on the bridge shelter and encourage your support of it.
Thank you.
Carmen De Leon,
Hi, my name is Carmen De Leon. I go by Mello. And I'm talking about the minutes of the 12th, my twin's birthday. So I had to watch it on video. So on the 12th, you guys talked about the jail expansion. And I noticed that there's no place in all of that little graph. I even took a picture, but I'm sure you've seen it, for a holding tank for illegal migrants. I mean, I've already talked to a bunch of legislators and senators about making police able to say, are you a resident or not, and go ahead and deport, as I've mentioned a few times, automatic deportation. If you commit a felony in this country, no questions asked, get them out of here. If they want to stay here and get a job and be decent, contribute to society, fine, let them stay. My parents did that. My parents never wore handcuffs. They learned to speak the language. Why aren't they putting that into the jails? They need a place to hold the illegal people. And the policemen need to be able to say, hey, you don't belong in this country. It's just, I thought public safety was number one. And my abuser's still in this country. Where's my safety? Anyways, I'm looking at the time. And also about the Bonneville Dam. You know, I don't know if you guys voted last night on everything, but from everything I've been hearing is it's pretty much poison and toxic to the environment and the health of the people. I don't know if you heard about the bomb that went off in Tacoma not that long ago. hey, you know, if you want it to happen at Baldwinville, you go for it. You go ahead and keep approving these people that haven't paid rent, have been operating off a expired license for 2 years. But hey, who cares if the public comes and reminds you of that? It's okay. And last, if that was on the agenda of the bridge shelter, and you're not the first to hear about it. All of Washington and Oregon, I put it out there. Automatic, I mean, if you want to keep your tax exempt status as a church, you need to show us your homelessness plan. You know, churches have billions of dollars in their coffers. They have fellowship halls that seat 300 people. I'm sure they could house people all week long. Those buildings are empty. So you want to practice what you preach. If you want to keep your tax exempt status as a church, open up those churches and those buildings that are empty all week, and all that money you keep getting free of taxes. You know, you want to keep it, practice what they preach. That's what Christmas was about, right? The baby had no place to be born, needed a home. Well, that's what churches are supposed to be about. They should not be tax exempt if they're not opening up their churches all week long. I mean, I've seen the empty buildings all week. And San Francisco with no space was actually letting people sleep on the pews and get out by 7 a.m. Hey, it's better than the street. Why aren't our local churches doing that?
Thank you. Anyone else?
There's nobody else signed up in the room. And we do have somebody online.
Okay.
Caller, you've been unmuted. Please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. Kimberly Goheen Elvin, live citizen of Clark County, Washington, USA. Again, I just want to say that, in my opinion, all of today's verbiage from the Clark County Council should be on the agenda, that we could speak on the 8:30 Board of Health, but I'm not going to today until we get that straightened up, that this business you're doing is of the people, for the people, and by the people. I'm going to speak a little bit to the minutes. Again, a council member was not there on those minutes. In fact, it looked like all of February. Wondering if there was a vacation. I want to know. We need to, hold accountable our elected officials, and we need to know if they're absent. I get absences in this, that, but we want to know if they're excused or not excused, and we want to know if it's a vacation or not. Don't have to tell us where they go, but we do want to know if they're on vacation or just gone. I missed a few minutes here on roll call, so I don't know if that particular council member is there or not. I'll find out later. As far as the bridge shelter, of which is going to take millions and millions of hard-earned tax dollars, for a good program, yet it's greatly known that this council and Vancouver City Council and all of their entities have used hard-earned tax dollars already, millions and millions, to make what I call a bigger government. So you're all there, safe and secure with all your things going on. But that public safety priority number one is last. And we, the people, are going to be really upset at that. We want an audit. We'd love to have Doge come over here and take a look at all of your business that you guys have been doing. But with that, mentioning the bridge shelter, there is a building that has been vacant for well over a year. I don't know how many years now, but it's the DSHS building there across from the fish food place for homeless. And it's a huge building, and I'm wondering why we can't access that building for homeless, and especially mental health. We want that. It could tie in with the jail that needs help. That's another huge issue. So we want to know, and so the public is asking, what's going on with that building? I want to know what's going on with that building. I know taxes are being paid on it and this and that, but there's no use out of it that I can see. I do remember hearing rumors that children were being taken care of in there and stuff during difficult times of this last 4 years. But that place can be actually accessed and used for the homeless and for a mental health.
Okay, your time is up. Thank you for your comments. Any other Anyone else? Okay, moving on to old business, approval of the minutes of February 12th, 2025. Are there any corrections? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, moving on to the bridge shelter. Jordan, were you going to kick this off?
Yes, I was.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon, Council. For the record, Jordan Bogey, Policy Analyst. I just wanted to give a little bit of information related to the bridge shelter, what I've been able to find out about some of the processes, and then also talk a little bit about both the potential internal and external requests that we might see out of the Mental Health Sales Tax Fund, just so as Council is considering supporting City of Vancouver's request for funds to support the bridge shelter, that you have an understanding generally of what the other options for this funding might be and where we kind of are in the process, just so you can have a whole holistic view of where that all is. So just to reiterate, the city has requested about $4.8 million. They have two options that they have requested, one just being capital funding, the other being a combination of capital and operating dollars for service delivery. I had a chance to check in with some of the finance community service folks and some of our legal team, and have been working through some of the associated issues with utilizing mental health sales tax dollars for the bridge shelter. Something I just have found out in the last day or so that I wanted to bring to Council's attention that I'm still working through. So this is kind of preliminary. We've used mental health sales tax dollars in the past for permanent supportive housing projects. Including construction for permanent supportive housing projects, as housing is specifically called out in the RCW that authorizes the mental health sales tax, which is formerly the chemical dependency and mental health services tax. There's still a bit of an open question that we're working through, whether or not shelter is housing. It is not always defined as such under Washington state law. So still working through that. And I think that's something where if Council is interested in supporting the capital needs of the bridge shelter, that is something that we'll just have to work through. If the county ends up going toward a decision where they want to support operations related to program delivery, that's a little bit more straightforward, and the county could potentially contract directly with Columbia River Mental Health. I know their mobile opioid treatment service is going to be at the shelter. So we're still looking a little bit into that and some of those questions. I had thought that because we had used this for permanent supportive housing in the past, that might also be allowable for the shelter, but it looks like that's a bit of a gray area for sure, and potentially not allowable. So still following up on exactly that use. So just wanted to give Council a heads up there that is still underway. And then talking about some of the other requests that might come forward related to the mental health sales tax. Typically our process is that the internal and external requests, so both what internal county departments might request out of the mental health sales tax fund, and then when the external RFP closes for providers out in the community to submit for funds, those both happen in August. And so typically we know the full scope of what projects are being requested in August of any given year for funding in the next year. However, because Council is considering allocating funds outside of the typical process, I know Kathleen has asked some of our departments and folks to submit, if they know right now, what projects they might be interested in utilizing mental health sales tax funding for, and then if they know the amount. And so I just want to give Council a bit of a rundown of some of that information. I also sent an email to everyone yesterday afternoon with the latest information. But the requests that we are aware of at this time there is a request from juvenile court that is probably about $25,000 from the mental health sales tax, and this would be a salary increase for the currently mental health sales tax funded. They have a postdoctoral position in the juvenile court, and they are trying to keep up with salary increases for other providers in the area for those postdoctoral positions and compete with those other placements. And so they're still working with HR to actually finalize what that amount might be. But that is a request that is likely to come forward if there is available mental health sales tax funds. District Court has a three requests that they are hoping to make this year out of the mental health sales tax fund. One would be 2 positions to support the community court program. They are hoping to continue to expand that as it is growing in community court. They're looking for a crew chief position and a lead probation services case manager that they might be interested in accessing with mental health sales tax funding. A second request that District Court is likely to make out of the mental health sales tax fund this year are 2 other probation services case managers. District Court is looking into starting a mental health specific probation caseload due to increased need in the community. And this would allow District Court to focus on those folks that have some of these bigger mental health challenges and really serve that population. So that's a request that is also likely to come forward in the annual process. And then District Court also is likely to make a small line item increase as well as contracted services that they work with on the mental health sales tax side of things are becoming more expensive, as we all know, as service costs increase. There's another request that is likely to come forward from Indigent Defense, and they are interested in hiring a social worker to support those represented by public defenders who need extra case management support for those with mental health and substance use challenges. Jail Services also has a number of requests here, and these are bigger ones. So those District Court and Indigent Defense projects I mentioned, they don't have current cost estimates attached. They're still working through those. But Jail Services has done a lot of work in putting together some of their initial requests that they are hoping to bring forward. And they have a $1.8 million ongoing request that they would like to make related to putting together a standalone licensed clinical mental health service in the jail, and basically maintaining independent licensure as a behavioral health provider in the jail, providing direct clinical mental health care to incarcerated folks, and moving away from the contract model. Their hope is to improve care to incarcerated folks who often have kind of these complex mental health and substance use challenges, and moving towards a greater level of care than crisis management, and work to provide just better basically services than they've been able to do in the current contract model. And again, that was $1.8 million of ongoing. That's a request that's going to be coming there. Jail Services also is interested in a behavioral health officer unit. And this request, if fully funded, I think actually exceeds the total available capacity of the fund, which would be $3.4 million one time, and then another $1.7 million ongoing for a behavioral health officer unit. And those would be to support specialized corrections officers to work in areas of the jail that house people with acute mental illness. And those officers would have specialized training and be required to pass a national exam for certification, collaborating with mental health clinical folks to support therapeutic services, de-escalation, and really be able to provide individualized support services for folks that are incarcerated. And then the final request is actually a joint community services and jail request that is still getting fleshed out, but they are projecting might cost anywhere between $1.3 and $1.8 million of ongoing funding. And this would be a jail reentry program, a discharge program to stabilize resources and housing. And essentially what this project would propose to do is to make use of, there's about a 6,000 square foot unoccupied space at the Center for Community Health it was previously utilized as an evaluation and treatment center. And that space has 11 to 12 beds that could be utilized to provide short-term housing for people post-release from the Clark County Jail and participate in their reentry program. And they would triage those folks based on reentry program criteria and provide services to sort of try to help bridge that gap just for folks who are exiting the jail. And so just to kind of give you a sense, typically what happens is, these proposals get formalized, fleshed out. They come before the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board, where there's a lot of work to sort of figure out, okay, do these all meet all of the requirements? Do they, what kind of services are we getting for the dollars and things like that? And so this is a preliminary list, but just to give council a sense of the scope of what some of these internal requests could be. And so you can evaluate that just holistically with the bridge shelter request as well.
Say, Jordan, I have a question.
Yes, Chair.
And I almost hate to ask this, but do you have a ballpark of what the total of those internal requests might be?
Yes, the ballpark of that would be, well, so giving the caveat that there are 4 that don't have a cost estimate attached, just the ones that do have cost estimates attached look like it could be about 3.4 million one time and or let's see, that is about 5 million or so of potentially ongoing requests. And again, the fund does not have the capacity to support that. So there would have to be some decisions made. Those could not all be funded through the mental health sales tax. And so that would be something that the advisory board would have to work through and talk with the internal departments about.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Jordan. Can you remind us again what the request is from the city and how many beds that would provide that would otherwise not be available if we don't provide funding today?
Yeah, absolutely. So their request is for $4.8 million. And basically, they would be able to, with their current level of funding, provide somewhere between 60 and 90 beds, as per the last letter that the city sent to the county. They, with that additional funding, it would allow them to get up to. It looks like, the way that the letter is written, that they would hopefully be able to get up to the 150 beds with the county's additional funds. But they have a current capital funding commitment at the city of $16 million, including $9.5 million for construction. And so if that's only getting them to 60 to 90 beds, it wasn't totally clear to me from the letter whether or not we would be able to get, with the county's funding, up to that 150 beds, or whether or not it might be a little bit less than that, depending on what the final projections are. The language is, they won't be able to maximize the bed space available. And I know sometimes, the initial costs only get you so far, but you can leverage, further dollars to go farther. But I am not totally sure, based on the letter that they sent, if they will be able to get quite to that 150, but it would be a significant increase.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jordan, I have a question. Just to confirm, because I know we had lots of conversations about this, the other requests that you've mentioned, they are all going to be requests in the normal RFP request process, correct?
So that, yes, they'll be in the normal process. For the internal requests, they don't go through like the external RFP, but they do go through the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board, and they do review them for consistency with the criteria under the funds, and then sort of prioritizing based on what the board sees as the biggest needs, with input from everyone on the advisory board, including the counselors.
So are we considering going outside that normal process today?
Council has ultimate authority on mental health sales tax funds, but yes, that would be if council decided to allocate funding to the bridge shelter or gave policy direction to hold a certain amount of funds to then be used for bridge shelter purposes, and then have have staff work to figure out exactly the mechanism of that. That would be outside the typical process. Yes.
Okay, and then would that affect funding to our current mental health sales tax funded programs as well, or no? Because those were already committed.
It shouldn't impact anything that's been already committed and funded. It just would reduce the capacity, obviously, to fund any new or other expanded programs. And as you can see, there are going to be a number of requests. We haven't even gotten to the external
Yes.
requests yet, of which there also could be a number. We are running into a situation at the county where the level of need in the community and across the county is great, and the amount of funds are shrinking. And so this is kind of the hard part for council, where it's your role to help prioritize where those funds go. So that's the situation where we find ourselves, for sure.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of those would be jail services or jail mental health type of, or courts type of requests. So thank you.
Our attorney would like to weigh in. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Chair Marshall. I know that Amanda Michaelbrink is online, and she has worked with the mental health sales tax. So she might want to weigh in on the propriety of using mental health sales tax at this point.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Amanda.
Hi, good afternoon. Amanda Michaelbrink, Senior Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. I have, based on my review of the statute, it's not, the mental health sales tax is not meant to purchase or build a building. We can use the money to provide services within that building. So I just want to put some significant caution on the council moving forward on mental health sales tax dollars for this, without very clear instruction on what that money will be used for in this case. So if we're going to provide services, that's great. If we're going to provide a building, not so great. So that's the concern that I have. I know Jordan mentioned that in the past, those things have been funded. There's nuances to those projects and to those things that are not applicable here. And so I can't say that it's necessarily allowable under the statute for mental health sales tax.
Go ahead, Councilor Young.
What would those nuances be?
Well, in the past, we have provided funds to groups that already have a facility, and they needed to do some renovations to make it up to ADA code so that they could continue to provide services to individuals who are already receiving substance use disorder treatment. Usually, if this money goes towards anyone's system is already in place, something is already in place, and we are contributing to assist with that. Additionally, when we do provide those types of funds, we usually have a 20 to 30 year requirement that those facilities be used for low income housing for that period of time. And my understanding is that the city is not asking for that long of a commitment as far as the use of that property. But and again, I will say I don't have all of the information in regards to this project, but the nuances are something is already in place, and we provide additional funding to either help rehab, provide more services, help more people. We have not gone out and purchased a building whole cloth for mental health services. The other issue that I have is, and again, because I don't know what the full scope of this project is, what if we're going to use mental health sales tax, it has to be for mental health services or substance use disorder services. And I don't know if there's going to be somebody at the door checking to make sure that the people coming in meet that criteria.
Okay, because we funded Lincoln Place 2, a capital portion of it, using mental health sales tax. And then this last round through the process, we also approved Housing Initiative LLC and Community Roots, also capital. Those are new buildings. They're not existing, not being remodeled. So I don't understand where the difference lies.
Okay, I don't have any information on those projects, and I don't have all the information on this project, so I can't speak any further on that. So I just know what the mental health sales tax statute says.
Okay, the county manager, did you have something to add?
I would just ask that we allow the review to be done because we would have to assess any risk if we did prior projects that were not eligible. So I just want to be mindful of that.
Okay, so past practices may not have been the right practices. We don't know.
Chair.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Amanda. Could you read to us the relevant language on the word on housing and what the applicable language is? Help us guide because we are going to make a decision here, and it will be based on what the legal decision is afterwards. It might modify what we determine right now, but could you just read it to us so that we can get a better sense of whether a building that helps people with mental health could count?
Sure. So this is RCW 42-14-460, and I'm looking at subsection 3. That states, monies collected under this section must be used solely for the purpose of providing for the operation or delivery of chemical dependency or mental health treatment programs and services for the operation or delivery of therapeutic court programs and services. Monies collected by cities and counties under this section may also be used for modifications to existing facilities to address health and safety needs necessary for the provision, operation, or delivery of chemical transportation and housing that are a component of a coordinated chemical dependency or mental health treatment program or service. Every county that authorizes the tax provided in this section shall, and every other county may, establish and operate a therapeutic court component for dependency proceedings designed to be effective for the court size, location, and resources.
Thank you so much. And for Jordan, I was just curious, of the 4.8 million requested, how much of that was for operations versus capital expenses?
So there were two requests from the city. They gave two options. The first one would be only capital. The second one would be 3.5 million capital contribution, and then a request for $450,000 for 3 years annually for operations. And probably the cleanest way to do that, per my understanding, would be for the county to contract directly with Columbia River Mental Health, who will be providing the mobile opioid treatment program and support the delivery of services in that way. And I will also say, just my understanding, and this is kind of all been coming up a little bit in the last just couple of days related to the housing component. And obviously we need to work with our legal team to understand all the nuances here. But my understanding is that we've funded capital related to permanent supportive housing in the past based on that part of the section that Amanda just read, where it talks about housing that is a component of a coordinated chemical dependency or mental health treatment program or service. And so permanent supportive housing has these wraparound services that are tied to the very structure itself and how that all works. I think the question would be A, whether or not shelter counts as housing, and then B, whether or not the services, if they're not providing services to everyone there in the same way that permanent supportive housing is providing services to all the folks that are living there. And so I think that's partly why we kind of find ourselves in this area where we're not the legal, it may not be legal to use for that purpose in capital here. But again, that's kind of the open questions that we're trying to resolve. And so I just want to be clear with council that we're still kind of working through that.
Councillor Belcott?
Thanks, Chair. To me, what you mentioned about Columbia River Mental Health makes complete sense because they would be tracking billable hours, patients, patient care, clinicians seeing them, like what Amanda mentioned. That is trackable because they would be in charge of doing that. And now that Councillor Young's mentioned the projects in the past that we dealt with that were related to construction, I'm concerned that we were incorrectly spending out mental health sales tax projects that were not applicable based on the RCWs. So I think we might want to have someone review that just to double check to see if that has not occurred.
Yes, that will happen.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And we may not be able to make a decision today. We may or may not, just to alleviate some of that pressure. Go ahead.
So just a couple things. One, I know that Commerce has labeled shelter as housing. I'm certain that we can find that information. Second thing is, I don't think there's anyone in this room that could possibly make the argument that shelter for people that are unhoused is not mental health treatment for individuals. I don't think anybody would argue that. I think this is a valid use of this fund. You know, quite frankly, I'm frustrated. We've been going round and around in circles on this for probably at least 6 months. And I don't understand why we don't have all these answers yet. But this is a program that this fund is designed for, which is to help people in our community with their mental health. And this will hugely do that.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I was wondering if we could switch a little bit to the opioid committee. I serve on both committees, but I'm new. Councillor Young has been there for quite a while and has a lot of expertise. I just wanted to hear your thoughts about the other funding source and what that could potentially be used for.
It could not be used for capital, as I understand. It would be for treatment, and we contract with Carillon who has formed a opioid abatement council, which you serve on, and there's a grant process for that. But I think it would solely be for treatment purposes.
No, I
Chair.
disagree. I think that it can be used for housing as well.
Let's hear from the attorney.
Thank you again, Chair. So I did take a look at the abatement strategies that we agreed to when we signed the Washington Agreement, and one of the items that is available is, and I'm happy to send this back out to everybody. Subsection B is under the agreement, talks about supporting people in treatment and recovery. So this is supporting people in treatment for and recovery from OUD and any co-occurring substance use disorder or mental health conditions. They may include, but are not limited to, the following. And the subsection 3 says, provide access to housing for people with OUD, opioid use disorder, and any co-occurring substance use disorder, mental health conditions, co-usage and or co-addictions, including supportive housing, recovery housing, housing assistance programs, and training for housing providers. So I think based on that, we could potentially use the opioid money for this type of purpose. Again, it has to be it's geared towards people with opioid use disorder. So again, we would have to have some sort of gatekeeping mechanism in place to make sure that those people are being served. And I know that the other issue involved with this, and I have not had a chance to take a look at it, is whether or not we can have access, we the county can have access to that money outside of the currently existing RFP process with Carlon. So I'm going to take a look into that. I just don't have an answer for you at this point, but I do think based on what is in the agreement that the county signed, it could be opioid monies could be used for housing purposes.
Great, thank you for that. So housing, a possibility, and then the grant process would be another question that we need to figure out.
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
Other questions?
Chair.
Go ahead.
Hi, Councillor Young, I share your sentiment. This is very frustrating. I've only been on this council for a couple of months, less than a couple of months, but I've been following up on this for quite some time. And at the end of the day, we're not serving the needs of our community. I drive out Franklin, make a ride into Mill Plain, and the tents continue to collect along that wall. Every single day, they're moving westward. As Jordan mentioned earlier, there is a huge need in this county, in our community, and we're not addressing it as efficiently as we possibly can. So I'm imploring staff and county councilors to please look into the risks, first of all, legal risks, potential legal risks that we may encounter if we allocate the resources that are being requested by the city of Vancouver. But this needs to move at a quicker pace than we're doing so. Our community is suffering, they're struggling, and it's only getting worse.
Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to make intention, a proposal of an intent to try to do a certain amount of funds from each fund and then let legal tell us which things are not allowed. So this is my thinking so far. And I did look at if we go to the mental health sales tax funds, I saw all the proposals, internal and external, including the ones that weren't accepted last year, and they're all great proposals. So there's not a good, easy decision here. But I would propose that we look to fund with half of the mental sales tax available this year to set that aside, if legally allowed, for the bridge shelter, including all of the $450,000 over 3 years for operations, and then the remainder being used only for internal purposes, because it looks like there's some very high end needs for the jail and for other internal needs, and we would delay doing the external for 1 year. In the opioid committee, I would recommend that we try to provide so half of, so we'd want 2.7 from the opioid committee to fund the remainder of the request from the city. And that would be the intent here. And then I would love to hear from legal which things we cannot do.
Could you clarify how much would be coming from the mental health sales tax?
I was thinking maybe we should make it a clean 2.1.
So there was two options. One that only had, I believe, capital, Jordan, and the other one had capital operating. So which option are you referencing?
The second one.
So capital and ongoing funding from mental health sales tax.
Include all the operations in the mental health sales tax portion.
Okay.
So
So is
450
it
times 3.
450 times 3 for mental health sales tax? Anything else from mental health sales tax? Half of the capital out of that as well? And a split with opioid?
Whatever totals 2.1 after that.
So is it splitting the capital then between the two funds?
So I think if I'm understanding you correctly, you want 2.1 to come out of mental health sales tax. Some of that is an annual for 3 years or whatever.
That's the 450, yes.
Okay, so 450, 3 years, whatever the balance remaining to total 2.1, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then 2.7 from the opioid.
Correct.
I'll second that.
I didn't hear that as a motion. Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
So let's repeat that motion. So it's 2.1 from the mental health sales tax and
2.7 from the opioid settlement fund.
And the 2.1 is inclusive of the 450,000 per year for 3 years, or is it, I just want to clarify to make
Correct.
sure we're all on the same page. So it's inclusive of the 2.1. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't want to do math in my head and make an assumption here.
The total would be 4.8. The total
Okay.
for option 2, as I added it up, was miscalculated. They asked for 4.75, but it actually was 4.85. And so your motion is for 4.8.
So I would modify the opioid for 2.75.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
good at
amendment
math
accepted.
earlier in life.
Okay, so 2.75 from opioid and 2.1 mental health sales tax, that includes 450 ongoing for 3 years. It's not an addition. I don't have it in front of me. I just want to make sure that's not an
Correct.
addition.
Inclusive.
Jordan, can you do the quick math on the letter just to make sure we're coming up with the same number that the city is requesting, please?
Sure. So they've asked for 3.5 million of capital and 1.35 million 3-year ongoing, so $450,000 a year. So for that total, which I think that is what the motion is. So the
And this is in-
450.
Go ahead, Jordan.
So the $450,000 a year times 3 is, let me just double check my math here.
1.35.
1.35 million. And that is for 3 years of ongoing operating. And then the remainder from both the mental health sales tax fund and from the opioid abatement fund, is a total of $3.5 million between the two, which would be 2.75 from the opioid abatement fund, and then another 625,000, the remainder that wasn't going towards operating from the mental health sales tax would fund, if allowable, would fund capital as well.
And I think Mark Gassaway is on as well. And it's his understanding we may not have that much in opioid funding for that we only have maybe about $1 million. So Mark, can you please chime in on that, just so council has that information?
Yeah, the balance of cash that we have in the opioid fund right now is only about $1 million. And right now it's all under contract. So I don't know if you propose to set aside future dollars for this project or how you would propose to do that, but there you
Sure.
have, the county does not have that funding available right now in cash in the opioid fund.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. Counselor Young and I had a meeting just yesterday with them, and they said that we had upper 4.5 million available this year for spending.
I think the issue is we have not received it.
Yeah. Who said that?
The chair did.
That's
Who said that?
Jen Jensen with Caroline.
Well,
So
I'm looking at the cash in the fund right now, and it's $1 million. So I don't know. I'd have to talk to Jim to find out what he's referring to because we don't have that currently available.
I believe it's anticipated.
Yeah. So my motion would be amended to, so that when the funds are there, that amount would go out.
Yeah, I would want to talk to Jim because I don't have any indication from anywhere that we're going to get another $4 million this year. So.
Well, obviously we can't spend money we don't have, so it would have to come back to us if that's the case. But from all of our understanding, it will be there and available to use.
And Mark and which is like our other, yeah, I just, do we have a forecast for this, Mark or Emily?
We don't have $4.5 million. The only,
Forecast, I'm talking about forecast.
the,
Like how we,
the only known amount that we have receivable this year is from the initial.
okay, let me
NOAC
ask
settlement.
Emily. I just want to know about forecast, not about actual funds. So Emily, do you know if we have a forecast for that?
I do know that Community Services has worked on estimating the forecast, and I do believe that there's more funding in there than maybe what we're showing in our cash balance, but I'm not sure if that's based on estimates. I don't know if it includes things that are previously already committed for the year. So I would recommend we route back to that and get a final answer.
Yeah, we probably should clarify that really soon because from my understanding, the RFP was being released today, which said up to 4.5 million on the RFP.
Yes, I concur. That's what was said.
Okay, we have some work to do to figure that out.
But I would still like to continue with my motion as amended.
Chair, I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Counselor.
Due to the legality and compliancy issues related to this whole thing, I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay, thank you. And
Chair, you need to get a second on that motion. for
there
discussion to
was
go
there
forward.
was a second. Thank you.
And I also accepted the amendment as well.
Okay. All right. So I believe there are some outstanding questions related to this, and I would like those. Let's figure out what those are before we vote on this.
Chair, there's been a motion and a second. There needs to be a vote.
I'm asking for some additional information.
Oh, today at this point, I thought you were asking to.
I'm asking for some additional information today.
Okay. Sure.
And so what I'd like to know are what are the outstanding questions? I think the funds available with the opioid settlement. Are there other outstanding questions?
I don't know if the answer about the opioid funding on whether or not we can take that funding outside of the process and if we would have to dissolve the contract with Carillon to bring it in-house. I don't know if that's been resolved yet.
Okay, that's a significant issue. Are there other issues? Amanda, do you have anything that seems outstanding at this point?
If capital can be used for mental health sales tax for this purpose.
Capital and the mental health sales tax, that's a significant issue.
Those are the main issues that I have, Chair.
Great.
And Chair, I would like to know about the funds committed for the previous projects that Councilor Young brought up that might be associated with capital funds.
Okay, previous decisions and whether or not we were abiding by the constraints. Okay, and you posed this initially, Councilor Little, as an advisory, a direction for us to go in. Is that pending getting answers to some of these questions?
Yes. Yeah. For example, if the if the request from the mental health sales tax did not allow capital, we would subtract that amount from that proposal, from that portion, but we would keep the operations portion.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think that a motion and then a decision has to be it can be conditional, but then what happens when a condition is met or not met? I think it has to come back. So I don't think it just automatically revises itself.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So essentially we
Go
would
ahead.
be giving direction. Then if there's a stumbling block where legal determines that we can't use it for that purpose, they can bring it back to us at that point.
The other question that I have is related to the internal request because how will this impact the anticipated internal request?
If this funding is committed, it's not available for internal or external requests.
What funding would be would there still be a remainder of funds that could be used internally? It would be foregoing a grant round for external requests, as I understand.
Correct. It would be left for internal. Well, the remainder would be left for the internal requests this year.
And what would that remainder be?
Well, if we're sending 2.1 from mental health, there's a current one-time balance of 4.2. So there would still be 4.2 million in one-time funding that could be used for internal or RFP.
But the
There's
internal is more than that, isn't it?
Correct. Yes.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Jordan.
Just so if council decides to allocate half of the so the current one-time fund balance in the mental health sales tax is 4.2 million. If council allocates 2.1 of that to the bridge shelter project, there would still be $2.1 million left in one-time available funds. And then, basically, and to be frank, there are, even with the $4.2 million available, there are going to be more internal requests than what the fund balance can support. And so then the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board would need to go through their process internally. And as I'm understanding this motion, not do the external RFP, but they would consider those internal requests as they typically do, and then bring those recommendations to council through the regular budget process.
Okay, and as I understand the proposal, this would be to provide services to the entire county for 3 to 4 years.
That's correct. That's what the city has communicated, that that the investment would get county residents 3 to 4 years of access to their shelter.
Chair,
Go ahead.
We have, I would be interested in the answer to that question. We do have a couple people from the city here. I would appreciate if we could bring them up and let them answer that question. My understanding was that the county would have access beyond 3 years, but perhaps I'm incorrect on that.
That would be a good thing to have the answer to. Please come forward. And I might just add, this is why we have committees to go through this stuff. Thank you, Jamie.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, for the record, Jamie Spinelli, Homeless Response Manager for the City of Vancouver. I'm trying to remember exactly what the letter said, because I think one of them, the one that had the operational dollars attached, so option 2, it did limit to 3 to 4 years, but with the option to then reevaluate together, just kind of dependent upon how everybody feels like its operations is going, whose needs are being met, how they're being met, et cetera.
So the option where we were not providing operating expenses gave us access for the entirety of this.
I think it was intended to be pretty much the same. I mean, it's roughly the same amount of money
dollar
total.
amount, yeah. So which way is it then? I mean, if we do all capital as opposed to operating?
It's still going to be 3 to 4 years. I was just trying to think of the wording on the actual letter.
Okay, so 3 to 4 years.
And then reevaluate at that point. If you
At what
went
the
all
operating
capital, we could look again in 3 or 4 years, and you can determine if you wanted to contribute to ongoing operations in any amount, which is different than the original option 1.
What about the jail and working with the jail? Will that continue in perpetuity, or would it be limited to 3 to 4 years?
It's my understanding that that's at least the jail component would continue in perpetuity.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Councilor Little.
Thanks for coming up here, and thanks for the proposal, and thanks for offering to work with us on this. Just because the public probably hasn't seen the letter, could you just describe a little bit big picture about this project and also what it means that we have as a county access to it? Like what individuals that will service?
Sure. So the project itself is intended to be, so from day one, it's been a goal to have 150 beds in a larger shelter. We had 16 million total to include property acquisition and all of that committed to it. And as we've gone through the design process, we have learned that it's just more expensive than we anticipated. So the funding that we have solely available for construction is likely to only get us closer to 90 beds, 60 to 90 beds. And so that was one of the reasons for coming back to you all for a funding request. So the shelter, just kind of high level, is going to have medication assisted treatment on site, peer support, case management, mental and behavioral health services available. I have a meeting set up with the jail again, I think next Monday, and that's after having a couple so far, because we do want to very specifically be able to partner with the jail for folks being released from jail with nowhere to go. And my hope would be to have the same kind of partnership with law enforcement and like inpatient treatment, because that tends to be where we lose folks, is when they are exiting a facility or something like that and they entered homeless. So I think that's kind of the description of the shelter itself. In regards to county access to it, so the shelters that the city has established over the last few years, which are the Safe Stay communities, because those are solely funded with city dollars, local city dollars, we have not been able to open access up to other folks in the county outside city limits. So people in Battleground, La Center, Camas, Washougal, even unincorporated, have not been able to access those shelter spaces. If the city were the sole funder of the bridge shelter, the same would be true there. Now, we certainly have enough people who are homeless within city limits that we could fill that space. But I also know that there are surrounding communities who would like additional shelter space, and they don't have the means to stand up shelters on their own. So in this way, we would be able to serve the entire county, people who are coming from wherever it is they were coming from.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks.
Jamie, I have a quick question for you. Are other cities pledging any funds towards the project that of the smaller jurisdictions that you're referring to?
No, not at this point. Typically the smaller cities have kind of said the county has our money.
Because I know we talked in Echo last week with Battleground representative, and she was talking about the level of homeless that they have in Battleground. So my question was if any of the cities have engaged the city or vice versa on pledging any funding.
No, historically, they've just said they don't have the funds.
I believe there is a tally out there of who gets served, and that's been presented to the cities. So I'm not sure how that will be worked out. And as I read option 1, it does say time limited for ongoing access to 3 to 4 years. And after that period, it would be dependent on receiving ongoing funding. And that's the case with option 2 as well.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
I want us to do this the right way. There's obviously potential legal implications, and we don't want to put the county at risk. And so my question to you is, well, first of all, can we make it a solid 4 years on any of these options instead of the 3 to 4?
Yes.
Question number 2, if none of these options are viable because of the capital needs, is there an option 3 that will allow us to provide funding what you're asking for services?
So like services only, ongoing. I mean, sure. The purpose of the way that the funding options were presented were so that you could kind of scale to your needs. So I gave what was kind of what appeared to be the max for the funding that you have available, trying to be, sensitive to the fact that you have X amount of money in mental health sales tax, X amount in opioid money, and that you had a desire to be able to continue to grant out some of those funds, which is why we included the option to spread it out over 2 years versus just doing it all at one time. So if you wanted to come in at 30%, 4.8 million is 30% of the capital. But if you wanted to come in at 20%, you can, so that was the reason for doing it that way. So you could scale it to your needs. So the same would be true. Now the portion of ongoing operations is significantly less than 30% of ongoing operations. And that again was just due to what you all have available.
Thank you.
Any other comments from anyone? Jordan, you had I guess you had posed some questions that maybe we could still get to, but let's go ahead and vote on this item. Does anybody need it repeated? Yes, please, I heard. Okay, it's complicated.
Okay. The proposal is to provide 2.1 million from the mental health sales tax, of which the full part of the full operations expenses in option 2 from the city would be included. From the opioid settlement fund, we would be requesting 2.75 for the remainder. Also with this motion is the remainder in the mental health sales tax will be limited to internal requests. Am I missing anything?
Can you add that the city will commit to allowing us to use the space for 4 years, not the 3 to 4?
Yeah, I can do that. I don't think my motion matters.
Well, I will add,
But yes, I can commit to 4.
I guess I'll add to the motion that there's been a confirmation that we will have 4 years of service for the county residents.
Okay, I'm considering that an amendment to the original motion. Is there agreement by the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. All of this may come back to us if for some reason this is not feasible. Okay. So I would just like to express some concern because we do have committees that have advised us on this, and I think there is a strong sentiment that their advice is not being taken. And I think there's value in continuing to have those committees advising us. And that I do feel like to some degree this is robbing Peter to pay Paul, because there is a continuum of need. It's inadequately funded at all points along that continuum. So with that, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, no.
Abstain.
Abstentions, okay. 4 aye, 1 abstention. The motion passes, and we'll find out more and be in touch.
Thank you, Council.
And Chair, if I can just, I want council to know that staff is not providing hiccups in this process. There is an intentional process to work through these steps that we're speeding up, rightfully so, and we will take council's direction. So Jordan did the best he could. He had met with the city once or twice. He didn't know what was coming back. The city didn't follow up with him after they chatted on the request. And so I would just want to make sure council knows nobody in the county is trying to hinder this process. It's complicated and there's a lot of regulations around it, and we need to make sure we're following those. So I just want to, because I know there's frustrations, and I can tell you everybody who's touched this is also probably frustrated because they're like, crap, we haven't been able to look at this in detail like we should have. And the questions come up. It's complicated. There's legal regulations, there's settlement agreements, so please take what I'm saying as truth. Nobody is hindering it. And I will continue to invite the city to reach out to all of our partners, the jail, community services, bring it up at ECHO. This hasn't been discussed at ECHO. There's a lot of opportunities to get other things done, low-hanging fruit that doesn't require this level of commitment. It starts with a phone call. or an email. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and I do appreciate Jordan, Amanda, everyone's, the fiscal office, everyone's work on this. And I would just say, because I believe there's something of a narrative out there that the county is not doing enough related to homelessness. And I would just say that the county provides 347 shelter beds. And I really, it's hard that we're saying this homeless person comes from this area or that area or whatever. 46.5% of those shelter beds are for Vancouver residents. So we should all be in this together. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Thank you for being here. So we're going to be talking about Heritage Farm wetland restoration. I'm happy to hear this.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Well, good afternoon, Chair and Council. For the record, I'm Jennifer Coker, Deputy Director of Public Works, and I'm here today with Jeff Schnauberl, our Clean Water Stormwater Infrastructure Manager. And we are here today to seek council guidance in pursuing and potentially negotiating a loan from the Washington State Clean Water State Revolving Fund for Heritage Farm wetland restoration. And with that, I will turn this over to Jeff.
Thank you, Jenny. There we go. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Council. Good to be here today. Thanks for having us. We just wanted to check in with you briefly today about the Heritage Farm Wetland Restoration Project and our funding offer for that. I thought maybe really quickly, I don't know that Councilor Fuentes or Little are really familiar with the project out there at Heritage Farm, but just in a very high overview, we have a large wetland restoration project that we will be hopefully constructing beginning in July of this year out at the Heritage Farm. This is a project that takes essentially 1,500 feet of channelized, ditched headwater wetland on our property there, excuse me, and restores it into something approaching the original wetlands that were on that site historically. So this is a project that is both included in our stormwater capital plan that council approves, and it's also a part of the approved Heritage Farm master plan that's been in existence for quite a while too. So we're excited that we're getting near the end of our planning process and design process and moving to construction. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about the funding for this project, and specifically about a loan that we have been offered by the state. So if we go next. Oh, and also a quick thank you to Jenny for putting together most of the information that I'm going to share on these slides. So just real quick today, we'll talk a little bit about the financial background, the loan terms that we've been offered, the schedule going forward, and then make sure we answer any questions that council may have. Our goals overall here are to come back in June to this body for loan approval and execution. So this is just today looking for your approval to continue working towards negotiating this loan. It will then come back as an actual formal approval later to execute that loan. Along the way, we want to try to align the Public Works loan policy with the county debt policy. Those are two different things, and we're kind of starting a little bit late with this loan process. So we've been playing a little bit of catch up, but wanted to bring everybody along at the same pace. So again, our request today is just to get your guidance on continuing to pursue and negotiate that loan agreement with the Department of Ecology. Next, please. So a little on the background. Back in 2021, we first were awarded grant funding to help with our phase 1 permitting and design for this project. That was in the amount of $500,000 from Ecology. We came back in October of 2023, applied for some additional funding from Ecology, and rather than getting another grant offer, we actually were given a loan offer in June of 2024 for $3.5 million. And that was to fund the bidding and construction and community outreach as far as phase 2. So that was a little later than when the debt policy would require approval. When we applied, we were looking for grant funding, came back as an offer for a loan. By that time in June, as many of you know, we were in the middle of our work with you all on the clean water rate study and looking at actions to be taken in the future with the clean water program. So in November, we had our clean water rate adopted. And as you may remember, or some of you remember, we did have some negotiation and discussion with council about the inclusion or not inclusion of that $3.5 million loan within the rate study model and our projections for funding. And so we ended up landing on including this loan in those projections and those calculations. So in the current layout for the rate study and all of those projections for 6-year funding forecasts, things like that, the loan is included. And then in January 2025, we got our draft loan agreement from the Department of Ecology, and we were able to go, Jenny actually gave a presentation to the countywide finance team on January 23rd to kind of bring that group up to speed on where we're headed and would like to head on the grant, or the loan, sorry. Next, please. So the terms, $3.5 million, as mentioned, it's a 20-year term on that loan. The interest rate is very attractive, 0.4%, which of course is well below market. We'll have semi-annual payments that will begin a year after completion of the project. And we anticipate maybe a little bit of drawdown into that 3rd year, but primarily these monies will be spent in 2025 for the bulk of the construction period, a little bit then as planting and things like that take place out into the out years. Next, please. Our schedule going forward, what we'd like to do is submit a loan packet for the finance team to review beginning in March. That loan packet would include both the funding application, updated scenarios for our 6-year forecast for the Clean Water Fund, as well as all the loan documentation. We'd move into a review period in March and April where finance, legal, and risk will all take a look at that, make sure that there are no red flags or surprises within that loan documentation. And then hopefully by May, we would be submitting a staff report to come back before you in June for council authorization and signature on the loan documents. And then, as I mentioned, July is when we'd like to be actually moving dirt out there and constructing the project. So next, please. So that's the basics, our request and alternatives. Again, really just looking for your approval to continue moving forward on this. We'll bring it back for formal execution by council in June 2025, if it is your desire that we continue moving forward. And the last part of this slide is just, if for any reason that council does not want to pursue the loan, or if for some reason Ecology couldn't follow through on the loan, we would anticipate funding the project as scheduled using Clean Water Fund balance existing, right? So we do have sufficient reserves in the Clean Water Fund right now to complete the project on schedule with or without the loan. However, the caveat there is, as I mentioned, so the loan is included currently in our 6-year Clean Water Fund forecast and in the underlying assumptions for the rate study and the rate model that set our fee last year. So if we did go ahead and use the existing fund balance for this project, that would change some of those assumptions and we'd need to do some recalculating. It could require adjustment to clean water budget, program delivery based on that difference, and possibly needing to talk about fee rates a little bit more in the future. So just so that's out there for you to consider. Happy to answer any questions. If Jenny and I are not able to answer them, I think we also have Marley Milosevic online, who is leading our loan and grant work on that project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments? Go ahead,
Chair,
Councilor.
question. Can you go back to the last slide with the terms, with loan terms?
You bet.
Thank you.
Well, I can't, but
or whoever,
Rebecca.
whoever can.
Well, a couple more, I think. There you go. There you go.
One down.
Yeah.
That's a good rate.
Pretty good rate.
It's a really good rate. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilor.
just gonna ask, man, can we get any more of these loans? I mean, this is just a no-brainer. You know, there's good debt and there's bad debt. And this is good debt because we are actually paying significantly less for projects than we would have without it. Because yes, we're paying 0.4% interest, but inflation is, you know, 5 times that, or maybe even 10 times, depending on, you know, what we're going to see in the future. But this is responsible governing and use of our funds. So absolutely supportive of moving forward with this.
Great. I have a question. I know this has been on everyone's radar for a long time, so it's exciting to know that shovels will be at the ready in July. The previous grants that we received, have those monies been expended? And I wonder how much we received in grants previous, or maybe it was just in 21 that we received the grant.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. So that $500,000 grant we received in 2021 is the only grant funding that we've got for this project. And that money is nearly spent. We've got a little bit left. The remainder of that will be spent likely on the mobilization phase in say June, before we really get in the ground out there. So, and if not, if we get delayed at all, we have the ability to kind of shift a little bit of our design funding that was paid by the county to start with into that grant to capture the rest of that money. And so we should be very close to the 500,000 by the end of the day.
Great. Go ahead.
I was going to add that this loan that's being proposed and presented to you is really the second phase of the project. As I understand, the first grant played for the planning and the design through 90%. So this second loan that's proposed will actually fund taking it to 100%, the bidding and the construction, and the county is moving ahead in parallel. So just a little bit more clarification to that.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, just curious how it gets repaid. Is it through general fund or through the rate? And then also, who did your design and who's going to be moving the dirt?
Yeah, so the repayment will come through the Clean Water Fund. So that's our enterprise fund for Clean Water Division stormwater work under the NPDES Stormwater Phase 1 permit. So that's where the repayment will come from. Design was done internally by our design section in Public Works. Our whole project team is within Public Works on this one with a little bit of contractor help for things like geotechnical work and some help with things like that. We will go out to bid here in mid-March, late March, I think, and then we'll find out who's gonna build. But it'll go out through a competitive bid process, and we'll find out.
Thank you.
And go ahead.
Yeah, just one last thing. I just wanted to point out too, you know, there was news that came out and then there's no news that follows it. This is the loan that we had the scare on, that we thought that the county was losing out on because of our determination of non-compliance to the GMA. Is that correct?
No, actually, it was a little different scare. Lots of scares to go around. So, no, the deal with the loan here was not so much a compliance with the GMA part. This was where Ecology had categorized our project in a way that was incorrect. And yes, I guess that's true because it moved it into the category that would have been ineligible. So yeah, you're correct in that, Counselor. It was moved back to the correct category and now is not hindered in that way.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
But we're not totally out of the woods because there was a 1.2 million, as I believe the last tally was, that we are losing because of non-compliance with the GMA.
Separate projects from this,
right,
where we
yes.
were offered grant funding that
we
we'll
just
need
got
to
a
kind
little-
of see how it plays out. Yeah.
We strayed a little bit. Okay, I would just like to say this is all part of the Parks Plan and the strategic plan for Heritage Farm. It all ties in together. So great.
Yep.
Okay, I think you just need a thumbs up on this.
Move forward, yes.
Thumbs up to move forward. Thumbs all around. Great work.
Right.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Good.
Thank you.
Counselor reports.
I have one.
Go ahead, Counselor Little.
Yeah, and do we still have Jordan? Okay. So this one is just about Dabbler Forest. We've been hearing a lot from community that there might be cutting happening right now, and I just wanted to. I think we'll probably cover this in policy, but just for to revisit where we've been is we wrote a letter to the Public Lands Commissioner saying that we would like a pause in the sale or of the auction of Dabbler, and also a conversation with him about his plans for older growth forests and how our older growth forests in our county would tie into that plan before any action was taken. Then very quickly, then we received a letter back, which Jordan, when we get to policy, if we could pull that up so that everyone can see the letter. I don't know if everyone's seen it before, but we did get a reply back, and it did have a sentence in there that said that the commissioner believed that they could not do anything to halt the auction. So the auction went forward, and we never did get that conversation with the Public Lands Commissioner. And that we have been trying to get DNR here, but I think I would like to step up the request to have the commissioner come here. Virtually would be fine, so that we can have that conversation before the cutting begins. And I would like some confirmation on whether cutting is happening. I know there's a weather event, and so a bunch of things I'd like to get an update on and try to do a quick reply asking for that conversation that we still haven't had. So that's a report, and I think we're going to discuss that topic at policy, right, Jordan?
That's correct. Yeah, that's one of my topics to bring up for y'all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's a little teaser on that. Anything else from counselors? Okay, we'll move right along then to work session requests.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Work session requests, sustainable future parks and nature.
Yes, so as council has seen during our budget process, our operating budget for parks is not sustainable. And so this is just Public Works staff coming to share the data on that and get support from council to look at options moving forward as you guys do approve not just the budget, but the comprehensive plan and parks, recreation, and open space plan. So look at where we're at, where we're headed, and options to fix that, whether it's increasing revenues or reducing expenses in some way, which the only way I can think of right now would be eliminating parks or sharing the parks with other jurisdictions. So there is revenue options, but they want to get the council's initial feedback and directions to start looking into that for this year.
Great. Any feedback or input from the council on that? Oh, there's a thumbs up. I think thumbs up all around. I would just request that, I know we've heard from several people in the community that we're not meeting best practices in terms of acreage and amounts of parks. So if you could include that in your work session, that would be great. Okay. Okay, policy updates.
All right. Hey, Council. For the record, Jordan Bogey, Policy Analyst. A few things for you today. I will get to that Dabbler letter, but that's probably the longest conversation that I have to present to you all. So I'm going to give you a few quick updates before we get there, if that's all right.
We've had longer conversations, Jordan.
The first, I don't have any specific bill updates for you today, partially because so the first policy cutoff is Friday, and so we will know a lot more following Friday what bills are for real that might be moving forward and what aren't. So I would anticipate probably a little bit longer conversation next week related to some of the bills that did make it through committee. And then I also just want to flag for council that the fiscal committee cutoff is on the 28th of February. So we've got over the next couple of weeks, we'll be culling down from the 1,800 plus bills that we have seen so far down to hopefully a little bit more manageable number. So that was the first update for you all. The second item I wanted to let you know about is that the official groundbreaking for the East Fork Lewis River Reconnection Project. They are looking to schedule the grand opening of that reconnection on either Friday, May 2nd or Friday, May 9th. So mark your calendars if you'd like to attend. They may have a soft opening as early as April 15th, but it sounds like it's really going to depend on the water levels there. But I know that I think it's the Estuary Project is hoping to invite as many elected officials as possible to that groundbreaking in May.
And if I could just add, if counselors are considering going, please let Michelle or Rebecca know because we need to notice it if we have a quorum.
Sure. Could that be brought back to us when they have the actual date?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, and hopefully they'll communicate with us.
Great. Thank you.
When they know for sure.
I think there's a strong likelihood we'll have a quorum out there. Go ahead.
And then that brings me to Dabbler. So I know, so Councilor Little, thank you for teeing this up for us. There was some interest from a couple of councilors in potentially sending another letter to Commissioner Upthegrove asking him to halt or postpone any activity if possible, even though the auction has gone forward. And I've heard that as well, Councilor Little, that cutting may have begun or is anticipated to have begun. But again, with the weather, it's hard to say that what might have happened. And I believe that they do have to extend some different roads to get in there. I'm not sure if those have all been constructed yet, but I just wanted to also let council know. So we do have a work session scheduled with DNR staff, and I have extended that invitation as well to Commissioner Upthegrove a week from today, next Wednesday. So council will be hearing from DNR about the Dabbler sale area, and have teed them up that council is interested in having a conversation on how the county can work together with DNR to protect and manage public lands going forward. And so I guess I would be looking to see if council is interested in providing direction related to sending another letter to Commissioner Upthegrove, and whether or not you'd be interested in doing that, knowing that we also have this conversation coming up next week, and that he has been invited. I have not heard from DNR staff whether or not he might be able to attend next Wednesday. I know they were trying to get him, but I also know that his calendar is pretty full. So I'm not entirely sure whether or not he'll be able to join, but I know we'll have a number of folks from the Board of Natural Resources and the Department of Natural Resources.
Chair.
Go ahead.
So whether or not he is able to make it a week from today, I think it's important that we send him not just a letter, but a strongly worded letter asking him to intervene in the logging of Dabbler Farm, or excuse me, forest. So if that can be done as soon as possible, that would be great.
Other comments?
I would just say I'm supportive of what you just suggested. I don't know whether it's within his capability or not, but that is what is best for our county, and we should advocate so.
I guess I would like to talk to DNR before we'd ask to halt things. I think putting things on a pause to discuss things, I think whether or not there's a harvest is another question. So are we just asking for a pause until
Yeah, that's it.
until we have a chance to discuss things with them? Because you know, in my district, and even the county, that part of this program is that the forests are harvestable and that generates revenue. And I know Battleground School District, for one, just to explain the full program that's out there, stands to lose about $500,000. So there's more to it than just what is out there. And I think it could be that, you know, if he's consulted with his legal team, there may be nothing he's able to do at this point once there's been a sale. You know, so I don't know. I think let's be polite in our strongly worded statement, but I think we need to be partners with DNR related to all the public land that resides within this county. So just to make things a little more complicated. That's what I'm here for. Go ahead.
She looked at you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Certainly, timber harvest is an important local revenue source, especially for Battleground Schools. It's actually more than $500,000, and it should be balanced. It's really, as we know, Clark County is at the foothills of the Cascades, where there is very heavy cuts on the timber resources, and there's very few older growth, diverse forests left. And if you look at the prescription, the actual cutting prescription on the maps that have been provided, they would be retaining only 10% of the trees. So if you do even variable retention harvest, which is proposed, it would look like a clear cut in most areas. And 100 years from now, it's not going to be back to what it was. And so it's super valuable resource for multiple reasons in our county, but it's either a one-time use for money or it's a long-term use for the public. And there are other forests that might be better suited for cutting first, especially when we have a commissioner who's pro older growth forests and and must be creating a plan. So that's why we wanted this pause so that we could have the conversation about how our very few remaining older growth forests fit into that plan. So
thank you for that further explanation. And I have reached out to Battleground School District. They're neutral on all of this, as is EMS District 1, although there could be funding for an ambulance. So they may be neutral, but I think they would like the money at the same time. Any other? You have comment there, Young?
Yeah, just, first Clark County stands to lose a little nugget as well, isn't that the case?
I think it might be a couple 100,000, something like that.
But, I completely agree with that. And I think that, unfortunately, we've fallen victim partially to transition as well. Having a new commissioner coming in, there's a lot on their plate. I don't know what happened with the outgoing commissioner, and again, I don't know if there is even a mechanism to halt it, but we should politely ask them if there is any way to halt the cut until we're able to have that conversation. I think that's a good ask.
You can be polite in a strongly worded letter, but
very good.
Absolutely.
Okay, Councilor Belcott, did you have any comments? Nope. Okay.
So just to clarify for Jordan, because I think the first letter asks for halting as well. But does council trust him to write the letter on behalf of council and send it, because you don't have another meeting before they're actually here? So you can't actually review it in a public meeting and come to an agreement.
I think I'm good with Jordan writing the letter.
I trust Jordan.
Yeah, I think thumbs up on that. Trusting Jordan as well. Okay.
Thanks for your trust, council. I will get that out by tomorrow to DNR.
Thank you. Other policy updates?
That is all I've got for you today.
Okay, thank you.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Just quickly, Jordan, something we touched on last week was a bill that Dr. Melnick was requesting us to support. Were we planning to talk about that today or in the future? I know that we received an email from you, I think earlier today on that.
Yeah, so that was the micro enterprise, the home kitchen, and Dr. Melnick did send along some more of his concerns. I think there were a lot of what he highlighted was what we discussed last week in council at council time, and so I'd be happy to if council wants to take a position or has changed their mind, but I don't know that we've gotten new information from last week. So my hope was to see if it made it out of committee by this Friday, and then if it did, have a conversation next week around any other updates there. But otherwise, I was thinking since it doesn't have another, my understanding doesn't have another hearing between now and then when the cutoff is, that we would tackle it at that point if it does become a reality.
Great. I have some initial comments, but I'll save them for when it comes up.
Okay, and now moving on to, we'll be pausing this meeting and moving into executive session. We have 3 items, 9.1 pending litigation, RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little I, for 20 minutes. There's no after action. 9.2 collective bargaining for 10 minutes, no after action. And 9.3 pending litigation, RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little I, for 5 minutes. And there will be after action on potential after action. So that gets us up to 35 minutes. So I would say let's come back at 3:20. It'll give us a couple minutes to log in.
And we're virtual today, correct? In our
Yes.
offices? Okay.
Yes.
Hello, the chair has asked us to announce that the executive session will be extended for an additional 5 minutes and open session will reconvene at 3:25.
Okay, the council has returned from our executive session. Are there any motions?
Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I move to approve the proposed settlement and release of all claims relating to the lawsuit entitled Catherine Endicott versus Clark County.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, motion carries. And without objection, this meeting is adjourned.